Ron and I gave up a wonderful chance to be at the fire meeting tonight, to be here.
Oh, is it vote
Budget
night?
workshop.
Yeah.
It is.
And
That's how much we care about.
Mike was on the
budget.
nominating committee too, so it's like,
Okay.
I hope Brandon picks up tonight because you picked up for him the other night.
Split.
So.
Yeah.
Nancy,
So you
just-
got a copy of the budget draft for in your board packet you should have. Um, So I thought the first thing we could do is run down through those highlighted changes real quickly. And they're accented by a little box around the cell there. So on the first page, we have a slight change in public information printing and mailing.
Last time, Mike, you noticed that the front page didn't total with the last page. I made an error. So this corrects that error, so that total matched the last page.
I'm sorry, it went up.
Huh?
It went up.
Well, the total didn't get up,
Right.
just the subtotals changed.
Right.
So that's what those are. Same thing with the instruction line and then the total administration.
Nancy, with the budget in box, the one at the bottom of the page,
Mhm.
that still keeps us within our cap, correct? Good, so we don't have to hear about that.
Now, are we at the cap, or are we a little under the cap, or?
Right at it.
Right at it.
Okay, so we're at the cap.
Yep.
So yes, the total budget stayed the same, just some of the subtotals within Nancy needed to make adjustments to because they didn't subtotal right.
Is that you corrected because of the state budget, is that?
No, that was an error that's why I didn't do all the inside pages, were all correct, but the subtotal from a couple of those on the top, 2 of those were incorrect.
Okay,
So it's just correcting the correct figures that is all throughout the budget that you got last time.
So really, if you look at the 3 sections, the administrative component goes up slightly. The program component goes up a little over $100,000. The capital component goes up mainly because of the capital expense allocated for the energy performance project.
Mhm.
Right, so the debt service increases, by almost $100,000, $90,000.
Yep.
Without that, it would have gone down, because employee benefits went down. And we're projection of spending less on transportation because this year we budgeted for a van and a bus. Next year, we're just budgeting for a bus.
For one
So,
bus.
yeah.
Have we had any bites on the one we're selling, or haven't you offered it yet?
No, I had problems getting the pictures on, but it's finally up and the auction has finally started.
And you made sure you sent it to the Southwest?
Yeah.
Hey, the same group might come by again,
Money.
you never know.
Another bus, let's go.
Hey.
Mhm.
So the total is still the same. It's the $5,438,569, and that is at our cap.
Good.
Our revenues, though, Ron, you asked if anything changed on the first page as a result of the state budget, and that answer was no. But on the second page, the revenues, it does.
Mhm.
So we're projecting an increase in our state aid. The difference between the difference between the executive proposal and the final adopted budget, they increased our foundation aid, which that's the best type of increase to have because it's real money. It's not expense based. You don't have to spend it to get it. It's just more money. It wasn't a lot, but the net change was
18,000.
Yeah,
take whatever we could get.
absolutely. Yeah, we'll take 13,000.
Sure.
So that trickled down through and changed the total state and federal aid, so because we got more state aid, we reduced the amount of fund balance that we need um, to use for the projected expenses. So that changed that box. It does not change the tax levy because again, we're asking for the maximum amount of our maximum tax levy increase. What questions do you have on the draft 4?
Why? You answered 2 of my questions on the second page. On the third page, can we get to that?
Yep.
I just had a question as to the second one down, less estimated revenue other than, what are they? Because it's in the box. So
Right, that changed because the state
Aid.
aid went up,
Mhm.
so that changed that figure because that's part of,
And that changed the next one down, the one due to fund balance also, right?
Yep.
right, and then
They're
it went
all,
down a
they're
little
all relative.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
because they changed the previous.
Yeah, page 3, well, it's number 23, but it's page 3 in your packet, is those two questions that you just asked Ron changed because of the state aid and the fund balance utilization. And all of the stuff below that is the same as you've seen for the last 2 workshops. That hasn't changed since January, really, has it? Any other questions on the draft?
So we're talking 42 and 43 cent change total, right?
Correct.
For the tax.
Per thousand.
Those are estimates based on last year's assessed value, it's the same values, which usually do go up overall, so hopefully that's like a worst case. Usually it's high.
I haven't been asked that question yet, but I have to drop by the barber shop tomorrow, so I'll probably hear about it.
We'll spread the good word.
Yes, well, I have been.
I'm gonna visit Greg in another week, so
Well, I'm
we'll
not
see how
going,
it goes.
no, I cooked for them because they've been inviting me over, so I have to drop it off. And I know he'll have questions that he could answer when the customers come in.
So we've really covered 1 and 2 on the agenda because we talked about the state aid increase. And just reminding you that the state aid increase was foundation aid.
And when you say foundation aid, will that be consistent from this point forward, or just because it's in this year's state budget?
That's a great question. Usually your foundation aid doesn't go down. Most often. Has it ever gone down?
They call it something else, but they're taking away from gap elimination, they're taking away.
They stripped
from foundation
millions of
aid.
dollars out of it for that.
Yeah.
So,
Still makes me shudder.
They
when I
may
hear
show
that.
you the,
Yeah.
they may show you the total foundation aid, but take away from it,
Okay,
in a different line, call it something
Yes.
different.
okay, I just wanted-
but really that's the aid that you can count on. The expense-based aid, we have to spend money this year to generate aid next year. And they project amounts in the state aid proposal that may or may not be accurate. That's why the foundation aid is what you really like to see, because you know that's guaranteed money, that's guaranteed increase.
I think it was a 1.9% increase.
I forget what the percentage was.
They had a list of all the BOCES schools, and I think the highest was 4.2 or something like that.
Was that?
1.9 was the lowest.
Yeah,
It was something.
exactly, yeah. So we've covered the revenue updates, the property tax report card. Annual um, action item.
Tonight, actually, when you adopt the budget, you have to approve the property tax report. This gets submitted into state education tomorrow. It's supposed to be 24 hours after you adopt the budget.
Yes, so Nancy and I will go online,
Thank you.
Submit it.
submit it. But this is what we'll be submitting.
The front page is the same format as it has been for the last couple of years. A lot of it doesn't apply. We don't have the library debt. We don't have propositions this year. We don't have a tax cap reserve, which that would be if I did the formula wrong and we collected too much taxes, then you have to put it into a separate reserve and use that the following year. So hopefully we never have to do that. The second page is new this year. The second page, and on their form it lists the reserves, but that's just what we have, the reserves that we have, the 4 reserves. And you see these on the treasurer's monthly. These will match that. The capital reserve, they list the reserve type and ask us for the name. Then they put down the reserve description and then ask for the balance at the end of March. What we believe the estimated balance would be end of the school year, and then our intended use in the following year. For the capital reserve, it just went up a little bit because it'll be a very little bit of interest. Receiving a lot, and we have no plans to use that in 2018. The next, the unemployment reserve. We have in our general budget 5,000, and this year's unemployment claims will be more than that. So in June, I'll probably request that we use some of the reserve to pay to get whatever was over the $5,000 budget. So that's what I projected there. The following one, the Evlar reserve, that is for when people retire and we pay out their accumulated sick time, which we did use for 2 retirements and 1 person that left the district this year. So I haven't transferred that money yet or asked for it to, but by June we will be. We'll either be transferring or hopefully using fund balance to put the money back in. But right now, that's where we would be without refunding any of that reserve. The last one is, we've been doing this for several years, using the 20,000 towards the New York State retirement bill. And the 147, if that showed the balance at the beginning of the year, it would have been 167. But we have used 20,000 this year out of that reserve, and that's why it's just showing a little interest, and it's not showing the 20,000 because it already
Transfer's already been done. For the payment of the transfer.
But this is new this year. The state wants to see what you plan to use your reserves for.
So each one of these reserve categories is earmarked toward, in other words, the capital reserve at 16,193, that stays in that category. It can't move over to the unemployment reserve. something like
There,
that.
it depends on the reserve, they each have their own rules. The capital reserve needs voter approval to get rid of, or to spend those funds, or even move those funds into a different reserve. The unemployment only needs a board resolution, board approval. The Adler, I think, only needs board approval. Retirement reserve, I think, yeah, so the capital, I think, is the only one that needs voter approval to fund or to, to spend. Repair reserve, you have to get voter. But they each, because like I said, there's many more different types of reserves, but they each have their own rules, how you can fund it, how you can spend it.
Well, that's, actually, this is a handy little chart. You can almost develop it. It's
They
very simple.
really developed it.
Look at the numbers.
I have to readjust how it looks so I can print it.
It's
for
a
you.
graphic organizer, and that's good for me.
So that would be submitted
Questions
to
on the
state.
property tax report card? Good?
It's good.
Okay, item 4, budget mailing. So our first mailing went out some time ago.
Yep, that was the nice colorful one.
Yeah.
Pictures,
Came out
very nice.
really nice. Was loaded with good information, but done, not overloaded, just basically what's necessary.
Did
I
anyone-
personally didn't get any feedback. Nancy didn't. I don't know that any of you did. I know it bumped into a few of you and asked prior to this, but nothing. No?
Sue liked it.
Who liked it?
That's
That's feedback. Awesome.
Yeah.
She's like a district
Um,
taxpayer.
She is. So now as we move forward, after tonight, providing you adopt a budget, then we'll have to put out our second and final budget mailing. In the last few years, we've used this format. Oh, did you make? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so this is an example of last year's. Want to take a peek at it. We always try to highlight our kids a little bit. So on the front, our board president writes a letter. In general, as briefly as possible, as succinctly as possible, to highlight the changes. So, Mike last year talked about the rebuilding process and the tax cap proposition for the extra building aid for the energy performance project. So Mr. Corey will again need to craft a letter for the front of this. We'll remind folks of the board voting, the public hearing, and then the annual election. And those two meetings are April this year, not April, May 8th and 15th. 8th is when we present our budget. And then following the budget presentation, we have a regular May board meeting. And then that following Tuesday on the 15th is the budget and board election, along with our spring concert, art show, et cetera, et cetera. We always meet after the closing of the polls, after the budget, after the concert kind of wraps up. We gather in the cafeteria for a special meeting to accept the poll budget results. So please put both the 8th and the 15th in your calendars if they're not already in there.
Is the 8th, a regular 7:00 meeting?
That's a great question. I think it is.
No, they
No, it's a
we
6 o'clock.
changed it to 6 to
do the
Budget presentation is at 6, followed by the regular board meeting. We did do that.
6 PM, May 8th.
8. Yeah, that's right, yeah, budget 6 o'clock. Monthly board at 6.
And Mike has a conflict.
Mike has a course.
That's the last class of the college. Damn. I totally forgot though, that Tuesday, that May always has a
Yeah,
screwy day.
because the budget vote and stuff is on a Tuesday.
The voting will be what time?
The voting is 1 to 8. Later, during the board meeting, we'll be appointing some election workers. Right. So then the backside, last year we highlighted the energy performance project proposition to make sure that people understood that. This year we can highlight, talk about, any suggestions on what you'd like to highlight. But then it basically, you take the data that you just went through on budget 4 work summary, and all of those numbers well, I don't know, they better not match because it's one year to the other, but all of these numbers will end up in that chart for the new mailing.
The question that may come up is when we talked about the energy performance, where it says a positive vote will increase the state aid to 46.2%. Is that after it's all been approved, or you haven't seen that, correct?
No,
So that's after it gets approved.
and you spend the money.
Spend the money, and then it would be after you make a principal and interest, like 18 months down.
So if next year we spend $100,000 paying principal and interest on that capital expense, the following year we get 46,200 back in aid.
Because I can imagine someone asking a question about that.
It doesn't, yeah, it takes a little while for the building need to catch up with the expense.
Okay.
Tim, concert's a regular 7 o'clock concert, correct?
Correct.
So I think it would be good to highlight something.
Well, you're gonna be,
The 5 to 9
I know,
specialist, I don't know. I would love to highlight that. I don't, maybe that's not a good idea. Let's see, I'm thinking that same thing. Dang it.
we are, which kind of, we have money in this year for elementary summer programming, regular education kids. We have money in our budget in the event that we can create some type of shared opportunity for school social services. I can think of a variety of things that we can.
Yeah, they're not huge things, but they're nice, good, positive things. They're good. You can choose for a couple of those things.
We're hoping to reinstitute a travel program for our junior high kids.
About the government and the program that we still can maintain that program for the kids.
Using government?
Yes, use the government.
We restored that in this year's budget.
Right.
But it's getting some traction. We could talk about that.
A lot of things gain traction, right? Volumes, but yeah. So well, yeah. So I guess what's our timeline for publication?
I have to have that in the mail May first.
So it's,
So it's the week before the May 18th. It has to be in there, so it should probably be mailed on Monday, so people have it by the first Tuesday.
so we will need your manuscript by,
Or this, so we know how much
yeah, because we'll have to
That's Friday.
publish. You said it's gotta be in the mail by May first,
it should be at people's houses May first, that Tuesday.
so it's
I'd like to make
gotta be in the
that Monday.
mail on April 30th,
So I should get you something by the
5th.
26th.
25th, 26th. Um, So, board members, any ideas for Mike's letter? Things that we wanna, it's about our budget development or our adopted budget that you think would be good to highlight for Mike to capture and get it out?
Definitely up gap. One would up
Yeah, we mentioned that in last year's too.
of cap.
Yeah, I think that's important that we're staying
That
within,
we would
within the
carefully
allowable
vet it
cap.
out.
Yep.
Yes, I think that's important.
What was the cap again this year, Nancy? It was right around 2, wasn't it?
No,
This was 2.19 last year.
it's like
Well-
3.82.
Oh, was it?
You're thinking CPI was 2%, but the overall, our cap, we were allowed.
That was higher than that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have showed that number out.
That's this for the period.
I can get that for you.
Yeah.
I've got so many work copies. I'm
It is.
sure you can find
The travel club, is that something we could, like, can talk about, or we haven't really gotten that set up for the other classes?
I'm not sure what you're asking, Ron.
Well, you were saying some things positive to the community. What about trying to help the classes raise funds for their trips by,
Oh, the senior trip program, the senior trip fundraising program? Yeah, we're kind of in midstream.
so it's not worth mentioning now?
No,
If we're gonna mention anything, we would mention reinstituting the junior high trip, because that's something, I mean, the senior trip's always been,
Mhm.
so that's not really any change, but the junior high trip where they would go to Boston and New York or wherever
Yeah.
we're gonna send them now, that's new,
yeah, that's a restoration.
that's a restoration.
some of the things you mentioned in your.
I mean, it would be nice to,
This one?
again, if this is only a paragraph, 4 sentences, so we could be general in stating that we plan to restore some elective classes without necessarily,
That we did last year. We intend to do more.
you know, we can, without necessarily
Without
spotlighting the generalist itself, just spotlight what that's gonna accomplish for us.
Because that will be, that will happen.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you can always use the publication that Nancy and I do midstream. You know, see if you want to reiterate any of that. You know, we talked about levy, the aid, you know, hey, what the heck, mention that we actually got a little bit of an increase in state aid. We always mention it when we don't, so
Yeah.
in all fairness, we ought to mention it when we get a little extra,
Yeah.
you know, not a lot, but, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's good.
We're continuing to update our buses, you know,
Right, the transportation, sure.
yeah, so,
There's lots of stuff.
yeah, so maybe, you still have a copy of this, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe take a few things out of that, and just reiterate in this next round.
Yeah, it's a good idea. This is why I go home to.
Yeah, in the back is, you know, is the calculations behind the budget, so that it's just gonna get changed to reflect our new numbers.
This is what we have next year. We're just talking about doing a fresh one, a new one for this budget.
Any co-curricular or extracurricular activities that we've changed enough to mention?
Other than the trip, no. No. You know, as I mentioned, we are continuing to reestablish the government program.
Right.
Always very strong.
And our students did very well this last year.
Good enough to be dangerous, Mike?
Yeah, and so that can always turn something into danger.
Okay. So the last one on the agenda, you know, we got 15 minutes or so. Um, Some discussion items, we certainly can add to this, but the budget process is coming to a close. But a few things. One, the DL program versus online college coursework. I know that was a topic of discussion at the last meeting. Something that's really gained an awful lot of attention in the last couple of months under the realm of school safety, following the papers and the headlines. Schools are planning to hire school resource officers again. I don't know how many years ago, but it was probably 15 years ago, post Columbine. When was Columbine? Early 90s?
1999.
What is it? 20 years ago. Yeah, that's how long. There was some federal money out there that provided the opportunity for schools, well, counties basically, to provide school resource officers. At the time, we hired a greeter. We had a full-time greeter down here. That was before we had the locked vestibule, which had the video and the buzzer system that we have now. We had a greeter. We had a school resource officer. A few different folks filled that spot. But the federal money dried up, and then the local money, at one, you know, eventually the school decided to use it differently rather than. And I don't remember. At first, it might have been all federal. Then it was a 50-50 school county, and then I think it was either us or nothing. And when it became us or nothing, it went up. I don't know how many years that lasted, but a few. But anyway, so post Florida, Stoneman Douglas, it's rejuvenated, re-energized that conversation, and there's been a lot of discussion on school safety, which I'll talk more about during regular meeting. But the budget implication relative, the main budget implication relative to school safety is school districts are hiring school resource officers. The most common plan that school districts seem to be using is to employ retired police officers who have maximum earnings of $30,000 a year. Um, That's what Warren County Sheriff Bud York is proposing, is what the Washington County Sheriff is proposing to do for Washington County schools. Essex County hasn't announced a plan, but there are certainly several school districts in Essex County. Um, So, just something to consider.
So we had three back, even when I was teaching with Freddie Flintstone.
Yeah.
One was a science teacher who was a marshal. Another one was an air marshal. And then the third one was a parole officer. And they were, again, working in their schedule. The science teacher was full-time employed, but he was a armed personnel that
Right.
a few of us knew about in case of emergencies. And we had,
Oh, he wasn't a school resource officer though.
well, they didn't call it that then, but we had,
Right.
the parole officer and the air marshal that worked that way. And then we had greeters, as you said, that,
Yeah.
only two doors that they could come in. The first one would come right in by the main office, and the side one would be by the parking lot where they could pick up or drop off students.
Yeah, a lot of schools have locked vestibules like we have and greeters. It's not just a locked vestibule.
Yeah, we
Once you
had-
get the
we had
vestibule,
both.
You have a greeter as well.
So that they had to sign in, even though after they were buzzed in, they still had to sign.
Yeah, back in our 2008, 2007, 2008 reconstruction project, we considered shuttling some offices and bathrooms, getting a receptionist office right there at the vestibule,
Mhm.
and pushing the bathrooms down the hallway. But the price tag on that was outrageous
crazy.
compared to the rest of the project, so that didn't make it very far. But that would be a cost-related school safety measure, but we took care of that. Well, we took care of part of that back in 2008. So
Yeah, I was
it's going to be a
situated-
topic. It will continue to be a topic of discussion. I'll be surprised if you don't have residents, parents ask you, what's the school doing
Mhm.
in terms of school resource officers. There's mixed opinions out there. I was at my chief school officers meeting yesterday, and I was actually very surprised at how popular or how many schools, of the 31, I think 28 said definitely yes, and 3 said undecided. I was one of the undecided because we haven't made any plans to do that. In the meantime, I've polled our kind of North Country small schools, and everybody's kind of at a different spot, part-time, no plans, to trying to figure out a way to get full-time, here. But it doesn't seem nearly as common a theme up here as it does even, 40 miles south. So we're smaller, more rural. Frankly, we have tighter budgets. Well, we have smaller budgets, which makes your margins tighter, at least sometimes. So
Those 28 definites, did they budget? Or
they are
Just
budgeting
guessing.
right now.
they're putting the money in
Correct.
for that?
Without any monies coming from the state or the feds.
Correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
Most are using the $30,000 retired officer model, but some are using the $90,000 full employee model, payroll, benefits, the whole deal. So Saratoga assigns a full-time police officer to your district, and the reimbursement's projected at about $90,000 for that full-time employee. You can schedule them as you wish, during the day, combination day, evening events, you have the flexibility to do that. You probably have a lot less flexibility with the $30,000 model, but I don't know. So
Now, were there any recommendations as to the qualifications of these? resources?
that's all through law enforcement. Yeah, there's a school safety or school resource officer training protocol and program. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not just grabbing somebody off the street. giving them a gun and a school badge, yeah.
Yeah, because ours were trained by Suffolk County Police.
Well, these are employees of the sheriff's department.
So the $30,000 person, like they're retiring from the sheriff's department, and then the sheriff's department's going to continue to pay them as a part-time employee.
Correct.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought they were going to work for the schools as a part-time employee.
They're still
Still a sheriff employee.
Right.
My understanding is they're still a department employee.
So I guess
We would just pay them,
reimburse the department.
reimburse the department for that.
So it'd be interesting to see what Essex County's going to weigh in as, because obviously Warren County's not going to reach the sheriff. Even though we're probably close.
Yeah. Yeah, they, I guess conceivably cross contract or something like that because we are closer. I don't know.
Probably closer to Chesterton than Margaret.
A lot closer, yeah. And I've asked that question, you know, you think about all the school districts and all the buildings, some school districts are hiring multiple resource officers. You know, ideally, you want one per building. A lot of schools have 3, 4, 5 buildings. And some schools are hiring multiple. And according to the sheriffs of those two more southern counties, they don't think it's going to be an issue to find people to man these, you know, to take these positions. I don't know there were that many retired police officers out there that were looking for school resource officer work in schools, but I guess you don't know.
People are so into trying to keep the children safe that
It's
they'll
definitely
come out of the woodwork. People who might have been retired for a while and then say, wait a minute, I've been out of service for 12 years, but with a little training, I could get back in and be useful.
It's definitely a very, very relevant and very emotionally involved topic right now with all of the things. You know, sadly, there's been, I don't even know what the current number is, but 14, you know, mass shootings since January 1st. It's just, it's become very, very common. And obviously the one at Stoneman Douglas was horrific in terms of school violence. But you had Newtown, Connecticut, you had Columbine, you had Stoneman Douglas. It's horrible.
There was
So-
one recently in Vermont where it was planned, but he
Holding.
didn't get to carry it out. And today they were
He
trying
got
to
parole, yeah, or he got
see
bail.
whether he would be allowed to have bail or not.
Yeah, they made the decision he's allowed to have bail, I think.
Yeah, because the intent or something, that's the key word in the law.
Yeah, he was an 18 or 19-year-old.
It was one of the Massachusetts, there's many casualties, because that's the one where the resource officer.
Didn't go in.
No,
The
that was
one
the
in
Florida one.
Oh, that was
What's that
Florida.
one, the name?
Massachusetts, the resource officer actually shot the student that, I think he shot two people, one
Yeah.
died,
Oh, right.
one lived.
Yeah.
And then the resource officer shot the assailant.
Yeah,
That was after Florida.
our
Yeah.
officer got one kid carrying a pellet pistol. And that's decades and decades ago, but because of the proximity to New York, they started the program there sooner. And they got the one kid carrying a pellet pistol. Look,
It was real.
So, and again, we have more time during the, you know, during the board meeting, but the other thing that Danae brought up with me is, you know, an instrumental music program that's gotten a lot of inquiries about, you know, what we're going to do. But I just want to remind you that our full-time tenured employee took a 1-year leave of absence. And we hired the current teacher as a long-term substitute for 1 year. The difference being the substitute that we hired is capable of teaching instrumental music.
Mhm.
You know,
And enjoys it.
that's her specialty. She can do both vocal and instrumental. the one who took a leave of absence is a vocal person. She's not an instrumental specialist, so, Danae posed the question to me, well, what are we gonna do? And I think it's a valid question. This year, we've seen an increased number of students take part in and really enjoy an instrumental music program. I don't know where we are for numbers, but 15, 18, at least 15.
And that's just the high school.
That's just the ones
That-
we see
that's
on
just-
stage,
that's
right?
just 7
Then
through
we have a
12,
handful
so
of kids in
we've got
fourth,
the-
fifth, and sixth. So, we need to be mindful of that. If you have somebody that's specializes in a discipline, you can grow a program. If you don't, you can't. You can't expect the program to grow if you don't have that expertise. So, looping back up to the DL program versus online, we have a set amount of money in to be used for one or the other. Can't do both. But the DL is the hybrid DL. It's a kind of a DL for beginners. A receive only. It's not the full deal.
What did we allot for that again? I just don't remember. Around approximate.
For the OC's part, service part of it, 15,000.
Because originally we talked 60,000.
That's
Right,
the full
that's the
program.
That's the
Full
full.
Yep.
Okay.
The 15 was the much reduced.
Okay, so we went down to 15.
And wasn't there about another 10 that in order to do the BOCES component, we had to do the extra bandwidth?
Right, we put in extra for bandwidth, and after talking to Tim, some of that is needed even if we weren't gonna do DL, and some won't because of the DL, so that's around 8,000. So it's the 15,
So, if we did go the online college coursework versus the DEL program, can we use that 15,000 towards the college coursework, or is that way over budgeting for college coursework?
Well, yeah, I think it's over budgeting for college coursework. College coursework is about like here it is, $600 per course. So that gets you a lot of courses. We would never use that much, but I don't know how much we would use. It's going to depend on the year. It's going to depend on the group of kids. It's going to depend on how motivated they are. But one kid, 1 3-hour credit course through a North Country or SUNY Adirondacks, about $600.
And that's an accredited course that they can
College
take
course.
to any SUNY college.
I'm not going to say that
It's
because
accredited.
it's accredited, but it doesn't mean it's going to transfer to any other place.
Well, I'm saying any other SUNY, not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily.
Okay.
Most likely, but we never make those guarantees.
Mhm.
And if we did go that online college coursework direction, does it require additional supervision or additional employees to manage the supervision of those children taking those courses?
Depends on how you implement it. Ideally, no. It's done independently. You do it at your own pace, on your own time.
Is that something they could do in study hall then? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at home, of course.
We can work on it at home, but I think we were talking last time that if we were footing the cost of the course, that we wanted someone supervising it enough to see that they were actually logging in and taking and actually doing the coursework.
And then, we talked about the fact that it would not require a certified teacher. For
When
instance.
Right, but it would be the guidance to ensure that they didn't get stuck and just go, oh, no, I can't do this. And
So that would require a teacher, an assistant, or an aide, whoever's available.
whoever's
Um,
So there would be.
There is, yeah, that is an additional expense.
But I think we were looking at it was 15,000 for the DL program. So in the process of DL program, there had to be someone in the room from the DL program as well. So it wasn't necessarily a change.
There is not necessarily somebody in the DL room.
I thought there had to be something.
We've hosted classes without having an assistant in the DL. We've had some classes with and some classes without, or received, excuse me. Obviously, we have somebody in there that we host, we're
Right.
hosting. But we've received DL classes without anybody in there.
Is there a method to monitor to make sure that it's being done properly?
Well, the teacher that's teaching the course is monitoring it.
But
You
if we
see everybody in
receive,
the
if we
classroom.
receive the teachers in another school,
But they see everybody in the classroom.
Okay.
That's the whole, they see their students, they're talking to them.
So if we, like, I'm gonna play a what if game for a minute with numbers, because if we allotted, for example, let me go back to Nancy's figures, 15,000, and then on top of that, 8,000. And we have a total of 23,000 that we could use in a different way if we didn't do the DL, correct? Okay, so if we allotted like 6,000 for this online college coursework project, we'll call it for now, that would leave us even with 17,000. If we wanted to do the school resource officer, that may be put towards that, but we still need to find an extra 13,000 on top of that to go back to your 30,000 figure.
Correct.
So is there any way to go back and allocate 13,000, or just decide to do the 13,000 and go somewhat cap? And will that cause too many problems?
We wouldn't go over the cap, we
cap,
might use
use
more
fund
fund balance for
Right.
your expenses.
So it's the fund balance.
Oh, okay. I don't know, is anything like that possible, so you could reallocate some of
Well, the
resources?
$6,000 simply buy you 10 courses.
Right. I mean, we could cap it as a project.
That's quite a bit. I don't think we're gonna spend,
So you think that's.
I don't think so, because it's really gonna be for seniors. Juniors don't have enough time, if you have an accelerated junior, if you have your really motivated junior, maybe, but, so seniors end up kind of maxing out, they've already taken a lot of our electives. I think $6,000 would pay for all the coursework that we needed next year. I would be excited if it weren't enough, because that means that kids are taking more, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't enough. But if we did misjudge, what are you gonna misjudge by, a few $1,000s? I mean, really, it's not.
Right.
If you're, yeah, but again, that'd be awesome if we didn't have enough money and we needed to allocate
more,
more.
because that proves more kids are
Oh yeah,
taking.
more kids are taking accelerated coursework.
Yeah.
Uh,
That would be sweet.
Well, I would like to make a proposal then, as a board member, to my board peers, that we allocate some amount of money for the college coursework, then allocate the remainder of that, and I would agree with a school resource part-time person at 30,000. Allocate the remainder of that money towards that school resource officer, and then try and fund it with the remainder that we need.
I personally would rather fund the instrumental music program. I think with the school resource officer, what we need to do for this year is form a safety committee to figure out what is our needs and how can that resource officer benefit us. Because I just feel like paying somebody all day to be here is wasteful of resources and not necessarily improving our security. Because we're very vulnerable for an hour in the morning, and we're vulnerable for an hour and a half in the afternoon. And other than that, we're primarily on lockdown. So I really, for me to get on board with a resource officer, I have to know that that time they're staying around in the middle of the day, that we can get something useful from them. That they would have to be able to meet some other need that the school has.
And Tim, when we say part-time, what are the hours that we're thinking?
I've not had, Six County has not really gotten out in front of this. If they have, they certainly haven't shared with me, but that's not uncommon. We're kind of, I always joke, we don't have a county.
Right.
We're
That's an awful thing to say, but
definitely more,
we really
more.
don't have a county. But, so that being said, what my colleagues are talking about in Washington and Warren County, that's a full-time, it's a school day employee. They're here from 8 to 3, 180 days a year. That's what that $30,000 is expected to bring in. Or if you want to say, hey, listen, work 12 to 8 tonight because we got a huge soccer game, a huge basketball game or whatever. So, but Sue, I say that, I've not had any conversations with the sheriff. But that's what schools are expecting. They're expecting a full-time retired police officer to work the school schedule with that money. So if it is something that we're interested in, that's why we're talking about it now. A, from a budget perspective, and B, from a personnel perspective, I would have to start having conversations with somebody. Call the sheriff. I guess he's in his last term. He's not running again. Sheriff Cutting?
I haven't followed him.
Yeah,
I think he's retiring.
he's retiring. Yeah. So, a couple different thoughts. One, to try to find a way to put something in place, and one, if we have some extra money, to look towards student program, instrumental programs. Is that what you're saying today?
I would rather see it used that way, just because I want the kids to be safe, but I think we need to have, rather than just because everybody else, especially these are city schools that are, jumping on that bus. I think we really need to evaluate our safety needs better to figure out what do we really need, rather than just quickly bring somebody on and then have them standing around all day behind a locked door.
I understand that, but I also understand that we're in a society right now that it's a copycat society. And thank God we haven't had to deal with that right now. But who knows what kid is watching violence or programs and wanting to be a copycat. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
All right, just again, play the devil's advocate. I hear what you're saying, having come from downstate, very large school district. But we turn around and Danae, you're talking about expanding the instrumental program. That would be hiring another staff member.
A part-time staff member. We could never, at this point, do a full-time person. So that part-time person who gets no benefits roughly equates near that $30,000 number as well. And our students are getting something from it.
Yeah, so I would say you're about, yeah.
So we could do one or the other, but we probably couldn't do both.
Not at this time.
Unless
Well, you might be able to
the fund
squeeze it for a
balance
year,
is
but then you
tapped
gotta figure out how you're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And I honestly worry about when you have a resource officer and you have someone who's unstable, whether it's a parent or a student, and they want to attempt that, you've got a man in uniform who is clearly your marked target. Because if you're gonna do that, you just know who you need to take out first. So it's interesting. I'd rather see an unmarked officer in the building so that they're not obvious.
Ours
So
weren't lost.
so that they
Ours
could
were
blend
plain
in.
clothes.
So that they blend in, they're carrying on some function in the school, and like we approved a safety plan that we don't really know what's in it. You know what I mean? Because it's that safe. So this, you know what I mean, this resource person in my mind should be someone that fits more that description. We have another staff member that's around doing other stuff. So if that person is filling some other need in the school, but they're also capable, that they're also trained and capable of that, that to me is a value. But I just feel like if you put him in a uniform and you've got somebody that really wants to make that crime, they know exactly who, you know, who he is. They know exactly what he does, his time schedule. So if you've got somebody that unstable, are you really that much more safe?
Hear you. That's why the two that we had that weren't full-time teachers, they actually were used to cover classes or sub. That's how they blended in plain clothes.
So that's I mean I would like to see.
Yeah,
I'm not opposed to the idea in any way, but I would like to.
I'll say that
That's
the
what-
school resource officer program, they're not plain clothes. They are,
Right. That's
Yeah.
that's what I thought you were talking is uniformed officers, and I just feel like that's
but I think there's
a little
rea-
safer,
but
but not a lot.
No, I
safer.
think there's a reason it's like that. That's not just haphazard. That's not a haphazard decision. It's like that for a lot of different reasons. I understand what you're saying. Pick off the guy with a badge, but the model that we use in our society is we rest those officers in a uniform for very good reason.
And
Try to
they're,
discourage.
and they're carrying
For very
weapons.
good reason.
And they're carrying a weapon.
So, but, yeah, so as I suspected, it really comes down to, well, let me ask you this. Are the 5 board members opposed to the thought of having one separate from a financial discussion?
I'm in favor of it as a part-time person. I don't think we need a full-time person here, but a part-time person.
How do you justify that person not being in the building when, again, like Danae saying, they're already identified. So whoever might want to do something bad says, well, they're not in on Tuesdays between these
So
hours.
let me give you the opportunity to clarify. The $30,000 is a full-time person,
Oh,
okay?
Yep.
That would be the commitment.
okay, I see what you're saying, so 15.
It's a reduced salary because they're retired,
Right.
but it's still a full-time, well, what we consider a
Right.
full-time position.
Right.
It's not 12 months a year, you know, it's when school's in session, your school resource officers follow the school calendar. Is that what you're saying?
But here's the question, is if you have the resource officer, do we really need him in the afternoon then? If it's the front door, the only way to get into school, is every other door locked during the day, or how? 'Cause
It's the way that law-abiding citizens enter the building.
Okay, I gotcha.
Law abiding is the key.
Right.
Yeah, there are a lot of doors and
Right.
windows.
If somebody's going to do something illegal, they're not going
Right.
to knock on the front door and say, hi, here
If
I
you
am.
have a particularly large concrete block, it can be tossed through.
But again, going back, understandably, we're talking about money. Do we have the money? And if we do, what else would we use it for? You know, but if we had money, are we all? I mean, do you all feel that it's something that you would support philosophically, having
I
a school
would.
resource officer?
I've had.
Because that's a
parents
different
approach
question
me.
than finding the
Yeah.
money to pay for it.
Oh, I definitely.
I've had parents approach me, so what are we doing to keep us safer? I mean, it's there, it's everywhere, and just because we're in Little Minerva, it doesn't mean
I've had, yeah,
those
obviously, I
wackos
have
go
too.
everywhere. If we have the money, I would support it,
I am-
absolutely.
I'm definitely not philosophically opposed at all to a school resource officer with uniform and a weapon. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I'm also worried about losing our instrumental music program, which has grown in just 1 year spectacularly.
Mhm.
If there's some way we can have both of these things,
I'm not opposed to it, but I think as late in the year as we're at, I think gaining some education on what the better way to proceed with it is, you know, first of all, identifying when do we really need this person? When are we really vulnerable? You know, and then again, we don't have any, you know, I mean, you're quoting a number that's coming from Warren County. We're an Essex County school. Would they support us? What is our own county going to say?
Yeah, but the
So-
number is based on the maximum employee earnings for a retired person. Once you're drawing a state retirement, you can only earn $30,000.
is Warren, is Essex County gonna support us? And if they don't, is Warren County going to support us for
Haven't
that
had
same
those-
number?
Have not had those conversations.
So-
Right.
And again, looking at what we already do and what else can we do other than, you know what I mean? Those are conversations that we haven't had, so I'm not opposed to the person, but I just think there's some legwork to be done before we just jump and say that's the solution.
In the meantime, the instrumental music program is engaged with full time. Which is really unfortunate.
So the substitute that we have right now, it only goes through June.
Correct.
And then do we know if the other person in what time frame are we told when that person either wants to come back or doesn't want to come back after the leave is over? Is it during the summer? Is it June?
I have no reason to believe that the original request is anything different than a year's leave of absence.
But I mean, when does that person, is that person obligated to tell us,
No.
I've changed my mind,
No.
I'm not coming back?
Professionally and ethically, yes. Legally, no.
So the day before September, that person could say, I've decided not to come back.
Technically, yes. So could any teacher.
But even if she comes back, the instrumental music program will go away because again, she's a
Right.
vocal teacher.
Right.
So
And my thinking was, is this person liable not to come back? I don't know this person.
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball.
It's not clear.
So the opposite would happen. Do you think that substitute would stay on? If the opportunity presented itself?
Possibly at the right time, but
Do you think that person would be interested in a part-time? Because this would be a part-time person, correct?
this would absolutely be a part-time
Right.
person, no
Do you
benefits.
think the current person would be interested as a part-time?
only if she didn't have a full-time employment opportunity.
Okay.
Oh, I can't even say that, but guaranteed not if she had a full-time employment.
Okay.
And again, I think, full disclosure, part-time employees are problematic, period. They lend to turnover. You can find, it's possible to find the right person for the right position and have it stable, but it's a lot less likely to happen. But
When,
we've not had a lot of luck with part-time people in any,
when she was interviewed, or when you were doing interviewing for the position, was she the only one that applied, or were there other candidates that we might be able to tap into?
You would repost it if you were.
Yeah, you'd have to repost the position.
But still, did you have more than one applicant?
Yeah. We had 3 finalists. Or no, 2 finalists. There wasn't a stack of interested applicants, Ron, if that's what you're asking.
Well, we never do because of our location.
But especially for 1 year.
Right.
Well, 1 year
Long-term
leave and a
substitute.
combined K-12 band
It's tough.
vocal is not. That's why one of the other finalists backed out of the process because the more she thought about it, a combined vocal instrumental. Some people can do it, some people can't. Some people want to do it, it's a unique position. So, but here, right now, our budget is our budget. We know how much money we have. We don't need to make a final decision on allocating enough money for a school resource officer or trying to scratch out enough money for a part-time instrumental teacher right now. What we know is this is the money that we have. So, are you all comfortable with that? But something to continue to think about, because it will.
Do we really have to decide on the direction we want to go in though, DSL versus online college courses? Or
Well,
no?
yeah,
It's very
Good point.
different.
I haven't heard anybody say that they wanted to modify DL program
Yeah,
in the 3 meetings.
Right.
So I pretty much,
we were definitely leaning against that last time.
So the college coursework is what I.
yeah,
do.
we'll budget the full amount of money. We have that in there.
If it doesn't work and we want to go to it next year, then it's a step in,
Yes.
step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right.
And we certainly can consider a model where if the seniors have a common study hall, and I'm saying this without having my master schedule done, if they have a common study hall and they're signed up for an online college course, that they're assigned to a specific study hall and supervised.
That would cover the need to have somebody monitoring the,
Well, then the question is, do you put them in the regular
Yeah.
study hall? We have a study hall almost every period. Does the senior that's taking the college course get assigned to a study hall, or they get assigned to a special study hall? If they get assigned to a special study hall, it's more money, because we have to reassign somebody. And if we reassign somebody, you're gonna take them away from something they're already doing. They're just not waiting for an assignment, they're assigned to something already. So, and I'm not even saying that would be possible, that would require finishing the master schedule, having a conversation with Mr. C to see if possible. But I also, and I understand the reasoning behind that, I'm also a little opposed to it, because if you want to take a college course, take a college course. If you want to get ready for college, get ready for college. Take one course on your own and do it without somebody saying, open up your computer screen, now get to work here. Because in 6 months, they're not going to do that.
yeah, actually, I agree with that, and I understand what we were talking about before. If
There's
it's-
two
if it's a-
sides,
If
I
it's a
mean-
senior and the senior is taking an online college class, by gosh, they better.
It's the district
they better get
$600,
ready
so
for
we
it.
have the skin in the game, and I get that.
Yeah.
Preferably, it would be, you pay the 600, you get an A or B, we'll give you your 600 back. But in our case, I would almost guarantee you,
Nobody will take that.
nobody's gonna do it.
I think the more important thing is for them to feel like there's somebody to ask. Not so much to babysit. What are you doing? What webpage are you on? You know what I mean? But when you get into those online courses and you reach the point where this is a little frustrating and you're having a hard time connecting with a professor, having someone that, you know what I mean, that's not babysitting you, but tied to you so that you have a resource,
A local
a
resource.
local resource, a person, a face that you can be like, this isn't working, what do I do? You know what I mean?
But that could be an informal sort of thing. with people
But
that
again,
are
we
available.
don't really know what the master schedule is gonna look like, because in theory, with our generalist, there should be teachers that have some other free time. So if we didn't come up with someone who's teaching an elective, I mean, that's
Well, by
the point.
any
Is
generalist, we're not increasing anybody's free time.
No, the idea is to make more electives
Right.
available.
right, but
Growing program.
right, but you got to have kids taking those programs. So depending on what program we're offering, depends on whether you're going to get people to take that program.
Right. So in smaller electives, right.
So if we freed up the math teacher and he's going to take trigonometry, but nobody's taking trigonometry, then he clearly has some free time. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Or whatever.
And
Because
those
there's
are
no
those last
guarantee.
minute decisions that, those are,
Because we can
Students
offer
in,
electives,
students out.
it doesn't guarantee they're going to take them. We hope they're going to take them.
you're 100% correct.
And in this, is there any way to establish a relationship? I know we have one with SUNY and with North Country, but to establish a relationship with Hudson Valley, which is more of a career and technical college, so that if we have some kids who are headed in that direction, that they could,
I don't know the answer to that. It's interesting, we don't, community colleges are territorial. So if you're in Warren County, you belong to SUNY Adirondack. For some reason, we don't really belong, again, we don't have a county, we don't belong to a community college. We don't have a community college assigned to our county.
To the council.
So,
even with North Country.
Yeah,
In
they're not,
Tacoma.
well, if it is, then they're not like SUNY Adirondack, so. um, So I don't know, but it's, certainly can find out with a few phone calls if, if, if we can do that. Um, But like if you lived in a Warren County school, um, SUNY Adirondack is very territorial. If you're gonna take an online college course, if a kid from Johnsburg takes an online college course from North Country, and as a freshman in college goes to SUNY Adirondack, the credit won't count. Because they should have taken it from SUNY Adirondack. Community colleges, Mike, you probably know this, but they get subsidized for every butt in the seat. Every person that's in the seat, they get a subsidy. And it's a different subsidy for the counties in which they're supposed to service. So that's, I guess, in part why they're territorial.
I think so.
Yeah, it's all about the money. So in our case, I think we might be open to shop wherever we wanted as long as they allowed us access to those online courses.
I would be interested in knowing.
So
if that's
we
valid.
can certainly make some phone calls to, right now we have established relationships with those two colleges, but that doesn't mean that we can't look for more.
And I only see Hudson Valley because they're different. They're more of a hands-on for the kids that aren't likely to go and make their way through just a degree program. There's certificate programs.
They have from everything from
Yeah.
certificate programs to bachelor's degrees.
Yeah.
At Hudson Valley. Yeah, they poured a ton of money into that place, Hudson Valley. So yeah,
Tony's got-
And I mean, really, I would hope that Mr. Dorsey would be encouraging the kids to take classes where they foresee themselves headed, because by the time you're a senior, you kind of have an idea what direction you're heading in. So if you're a senior that's like, well, I'm not going to get an associate's degree, but yeah, I'd like to look at that electrical program. If they could at least establish the relationship, they're one step more likely to maybe go and check it out.
yeah, Danae, your comment about having a local resource even for a kid taking a college course, that reminds me of our students that took rigorous DL courses. One of their frustrations was he had teachers in Granville. And now, you're on an online learning community, so you get on, that's how we exchange, but, and we did then too, but it's not like being able to see your calculus teacher and say, hey, I'm really having trouble right here. Can you're side by side and you're working through. So that was one of their frustrations with the DL course.
But that's part of the prep for college,
It absolutely
as
is.
we all know.
We
those
have
of
a
us that went,
huge bridge
know that.
between here and there.
Yep.
That we want to help kids.
It's that uncomfortable spot we want them to experience, but just with a little support.
You gotta do something, yeah.
All right. We're way over time.
Tim, just quickly with the school resources officer.
Yep.
Have you gotten in touch with sheriff's office up in
I
Lewis?
didn't dare before I had a conversation with
I think it would be good to get to contact them and see if what they might have is anything like we heard about in Warren County. Maybe there's some money. I know the county got some millions of dollars of grant money for something completely different, I think, but I wonder if maybe there might be some money available.
you. Yeah.
A grant would be good, especially with the outcry for
We only have 2
student
patrol
safety.
officers in the whole county.
Yeah.
They're not using their grant money for patrol officers.
No, there's some sort of EMS and emergency management type of way that they're spending their money. And they were doing millions of dollars. I don't know what the heck it's going to get beyond there.
That's Warren County.
Essex County.
Well, Essex,
Yeah, that was that whole fly car thing. Warren County didn't want, but Essex is thinking about. With ambulances,
For what?
fly cars, because there's so many
Mutual aid.
ambulance squads that are losing their volunteers.
Oh,
The county wants to station cars, the paramedics all around the county to help out towns that are lacking. Warren County said they didn't want to do that, but Essex said
yeah, we're so sparsely populated, so.
yeah. Okay. 7:30. Wait, wasn't the workshop supposed to be?
Yeah.